But no, for AMP Health, they use Asensei to do a movement screen. A trainer can, new hire onboarding, you can screen a population really, really quickly. And it's no longer a goniometer and a 30-minute appointment. It's in you come, go through these 3 movements, Asensei will kind of measure all these, range of motion. And more importantly than just range of motion, the nuances, like this person seems to have poor hip hinge or poor rotation through their mid-spine or whatever. And that does 2 things. It does a number of things. It benchmarks that employee. Like we know the benchmark of their mobility, so we can retest and rescreen and look for movement. Number 2, it allows us to do job fitting. Like if somebody's got incredibly poor shoulder mobility, they shouldn't be getting put in a job where they're lifting load above their head for 10 hours a day. And the third, and perhaps the most important, is risk stratification for the trainer. Like we can now answer the question of the 500 people on the factory floor, who are the 20 that are most at risk? So I know who to spend time with movement prep, with mobility. Should they be warming up before work? Should they be doing work?
Hello, welcome back to BioInsights. Today, I have an opportunity to talk to one of the visionaries in the industry, Steven Webster, the founder and CEO of Asensei. His company is changing personal training and advanced sensors and artificial intelligence. Really excited to have this conversation because in doing some research on his background, we actually already have like a degree to 2 degrees of connections, and we haven't met until today. So I look forward to his background. It's pretty extensive, from Microsoft to different career paths. So I definitely would pick his brain on how he sees the industry today and some of his use cases and the market spaces that he shares. And so basically, I would love to talk about some of your development use cases, along with where you see the trends going, because it kind of drove you in a direction as well.
That's good.
So with no further ado, to get us started, I'll actually just want to start with maybe let's start with your website for just to kind of add some color to the discussion. So we have 4 industries in front of us, and as a developer or as a business, when they see this, what are some examples of connected fitness, connected health? Is there one? Because the one I heard was the AMP solution for industrial healthcare, and the assess, manage, and perform health message was really clear and significant. Maybe you could talk about those examples of the SDK and the API that you provide as well.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. I'm excited to chat with you. Let me pull up to 35,000 feet, and then I'll dive down into these different categories. I think everyone's familiar with speech recognition at this point, as we've taught machines to understand us and to interact with us and to respond to us when we speak. And so think of Asensei as, what's that? I think it's like 55% of communication is nonverbal. The rest of it is body language. So the thing that's missing is, machines might understand what we're saying, but they don't understand what we're doing. They don't understand our movement. And, as a coach, my coaching has predominantly been in martial arts and jiu-jitsu and karate. As a coach, and even as an athlete, I know it's very hard to learn physical exercise from a book or from a video. It's very hard to teach somebody by sending them a book or sending them a video. And like, you've maybe never been in a dojo before doing martial arts, but maybe you've been sent home with your physical therapy exercises, that photocopy from the line-drawn manual of exercises that your PT has scribbled out. Don't do it like this, do it my way. Or you've tried to learn a dance for your wedding and you just can't remember it because, the instructor isn't there. So anytime we're trying to learn physical exercise, we kind of need that expert in the room, someone that can see us, someone that understands what the thing is that we're trying to do. And once they can see us doing that thing, has the ability to intervene with the right information at the right time. You know, you don't coach everyone like a black belt. You assess their level and like, you know, I'm going to teach this to this person, or I'm going to really show this finesse to this person. So that's the broad problem that Asensei, you know, as a frustrated martial arts, you know, competitor and captain and coach, I kind of really had this itch of if we could teach a machine to understand human movement, we could take health and fitness and sport and physical therapy and all other modalities, if you like, truly as digital experiences that could enjoy digital scale, but not be deteriorated experiences because there was no coach there. So, in a nutshell, that's the technology that we've implemented, and we call the category, as analogous to speech recognition, we call the category movement recognition. So, so you list out the four. There's four there: connected fitness, connected health, brick and mortar gyms, and then the industrial athletes. So I'll pause there and, you know, choose your own adventure. Where do you want to go from there?
Yeah, no, I think the one that would be appropriate probably be let's do connected fitness first, and then do a comparison to industrial, because the I think the workflow should be almost the same, but the nomenclature might be a little different.
I love that you put it like that. That's exactly what I tell investors. Is it's a horizontal technology platform with vertical go-to-market. So the underlying technology is the same. The underlying solutions that we encourage our customers to crawl, walk, and run with, they're the same. But, you know, in connected fitness, you might be talking about increasing engagement for Net Promoter Score, whereas in physical therapy, the same solution might be about how do we measure adherence for insurance reimbursement. So it's the same underlying solution, but the business benefit is perhaps different. But let's start with connected fitness, because we did. We chose, you know, we chose connected fitness as our beachhead market. You know, the disadvantage, especially as an early stage company, you have to have focus. And so if everything's equal, nothing's important, right? So if you're trying to do everything at once, you'll probably do nothing well. So we were very intentional. Connected fitness, you know, we brought our SDK to market, and we decided to go to market with our SDK in 2021. So we all know what was going on in 2021. People were at home. They were working out. They were buying. You couldn't buy a dumbbell anywhere or a kettlebell anywhere. Everybody was working out at home. And so this problem of unsupervised practice exploded. Suddenly people were sitting on a rowing machine that they'd never been shown to use before, or they were attaching strength training equipment to their wall and they'd never strength trained before. Or they were just swinging a kettlebell that they'd never swung before. And so it really illuminated for us that there was an opportunity for us to put this movement recognition technology in market for the at-home consumer who wants to teach me how to row correctly, sit me on a machine and get me into the first position, and then coach me into the next position. And when you see me in that position, tell me what I'm doing wrong. Tell me what I should be doing right. Or, you know, maybe I'm in a strength training workout and just like count my reps for me. So the next time we do this workout, you can tell me, hey, Marcelo, last time you did 8 reps with 15 pounds. Today, let's go for 10 reps with 15 pounds. And tell me when I've got 2 to go, 1 to go, and congratulations, you beat your personal best. And all of those experiences rely on us having the ability to motion track you, to recognize what you're doing, to recognize how well you're doing it. So you mentioned one customer, which I'll mention, and then we can dig into it. But it's a customer called Alter. And Alter, love the company. The founders, like very seasoned repeat entrepreneurs, multiple exits behind them. And their superpower is going into markets where they feel like there was a need that was identified, but maybe the execution of the product wasn't what it could have been, and that they can execute, you know, the product better. And they went and hired a bunch of people, ex-Under Armour, ex-Nike people, both in product, in human performance, in marketing, to let's build this connected fitness product, this screen that hangs on your wall. Let's give you an HRV sensor, you know, let's do a DNA swab, and let's create this hyper personalized fitness program that is wrapped around you. And they use Asensei, they use a camera in the mirror to observe your movement, to count your reps, to give you challenges, and to hyper-personalize. You talk about a lot about the biometrics and the BioInsights. This is the biomechanics. We're looking at the
Yeah.
biomechanics. So,
what data points are you seeing? Are you in the markerless data capture? Are you looking at velocity? Are you looking at power? Or are you looking at pattern recognition? And can you equate those loads?
yeah, so the problem that we most wanted to solve was understanding what the person was doing. That was the primary objective is, how can I recognize that you're doing a squat or a squat to press or that you're rowing? So that's understanding the biomechanics of your movement. And it's really two things. It's slices of time. Think of it like a stroboscopic photograph. Every frame of the camera, we're creating a mathematical model of your posture. Mathematical model of your posture so that we can compare that posture to the posture we know we're looking for. So are you at the catch position in a rowing stroke, or are you at the bottom of a squat? We look for what we call the lowest common denominator of that posture. What's the fair attempt? What's the honest attempt? Because two people doing a squat, I mean, if you're an elderly patient recovering from hip surgery and you're doing a sit to stand as prehabilitation, you're going to have a very different performance of squat than an athlete that's strength training because they're trying to get a scholarship at UW in the rowing program, right? And so we need to recognize that the archetype of the movement is there. And so that's what we do. We look for the lowest common denominator of the movement, and then we layer on top of that. Now that we can see let's just stick with the bottom of a squat. Now we see you're at the bottom of a squat. What are the nuances of that movement that a performance coach would look for? It might be knee valgus, it might be knees over toes, it might be hip hinge, it might be torso position, it might be the asymmetry of you getting into that position. So Sensei is also trained to look for those nuances of the movement so that the data that we're surfacing in real time is everything we see about that movement. And then there's a layer of filtering all that information so that we don't want to overwhelm the athlete or overwhelm the member, if you like, of the Aller product. That make sense?
Yeah, it makes complete sense. It's musculoskeletal assessment.
Exactly.
So it's looking at I remember the olden days of the kinetic cameras, and you had to actually put grease pens or marking spots on bony landmarks,
Yeah.
and I collect that data. Uh, it's funny because now the camera technology has obviously changed.
Yeah.
So, do you want to share a little bit about maybe some horror stories to where we are today that is making the industry potentially for you guys, I think, a great opportunity, but it could advance the space in many different ways.
Yeah. Go on, sorry.
Because can you define like where that camera needs to be in relation to an individual, and can there be multiple people in a room as well?
All good questions. Let's unpack it. So when I started the company, I didn't think we could use cameras at all. 10 years ago, I was working with Microsoft. I was working very closely with the team at Microsoft Connect and Xbox Fitness. Phenomenal piece of hardware. I know some of the engineers that invented that product really well, some of the smartest guys I continue to know in the industry. And I just couldn't fathom a world in which all of that compute power and depth cameras and infrared cameras would pack down to the form factor of a laptop or a mobile phone. It always felt like it was going to be a $200 bulky bolt-on to a computer. And at the time, I mean, you and I were probably circling around each other at events, but had never met each other. That was also a time where, wearable computing was very much, on vogue. We were starting to put, this from Under Armour, we were starting to put heart rate monitors directly embedded in shirts. And so I had this notion of, I think we can embed inertial measurement units, IMUs, inside fitness apparel. And so our initial go-to-market was, let's create this sensor harness that we will license to Nike and license to Under Armour and license to Lulu. And we took that all the way to market. We took that to market with a Californian apparel company called Virus International. But that was right at the beginning of the pandemic when we were competing with Tesla for sensors, right? You could not buy an IMU as factories were shutting down, as supply chains were choking. So that was the more alarmist part of like, how do I feel about this? But more importantly, we were just looking at the state of the art and the sheer compute power on a mobile phone, the advances in AI, computer vision. At the time we made this decision, the technology wasn't there yet, but we knew it was going to get there.
So it's being worked on.
Yeah.
Early versions. You heard about it and you saw it, so you knew it was coming. But the pandemic definitely pushed it faster.
Yeah, it pushed us faster, and the problem when we embraced computer vision, every point on the body you're getting an XYZ coordinate, right, relative to the hips, and the X and the Y were good and the Z sucked. That was kind of what the problem was. The depth information wasn't very good, so you could see lots of people doing demos that our brains are very good at like inferring the Z, especially even if we just see dots, we're pretty good at inferring depth because we know what a human body can and can't. We know the shapes it can and can't get into, but the machine didn't know that. But fast forward, we now have computer vision pipeline. We have
better than our sight. It's been studied and it's better than our sight in pattern recognition.
Yeah. And the other thing that we added in our computer vision pipeline is we added spatial estimation. So that's separate to extracting the skeleton. So we run another computer vision model that, this stuff well, so I'll kind of go a little deeper. Usually when you see a skeleton animated on screen that somebody's motion captured from a camera, the coordinate system is relative to the skeleton. It's a local frame. Every coordinate, the origin, 0, 0, 0 is the hips usually, and every other XYZ is relative to that skeleton's hips. So that skeleton is actually disembodied, floating in space. It doesn't know up, down, left, right. We implemented a computer vision pipeline that allows us to move the origin to the lens of the camera and calculate the distance of any point of the body to the lens of the camera. So now we can do with an ordinary $5 RGB camera what a Microsoft Kinect could do with infrared to centimeter accuracy. So now we know, are you moving to the left, right, vertical displacement, vertical jumps? Vertimax are one of our customers where we're measuring jump height. So that's opened up a whole bunch of opportunities for us as well.
Yeah, you gave a great example there. So it allows now, you could allow an off-the-shelf Apple phone or Android access to assessment, basically looking at reference. Are there any normative screenings yet? I guess clinicians probably.
Well, you mentioned AMP Health actually, so maybe let's kind of shift our conversation to AMP Health. So AMP Health, company that started in the US ski and snowboard program, but recognized that there was a greatly underserved population who we all call the industrial athlete. So 80% of the global workforce and 80% of the US workforce, 70 to 80%, depending if you listen to Samurai. But 70 to 80% of the workforce are in a physically demanding jobs, a lifestyle choice. Fitness is a necessity to be able to go to work. And so you can imagine the kind of jobs, we're talking about here. And so
fields, chemical environments where they're in suits.
Factory floor workers, people were just moving stuff around and moving stuff around. Sam, you mentioned a podcast I did recently with Sam, and Sam gave an anecdote of a factory he just visited where not only were people carrying, heavy boxes and twisting and turning and lifting, they were doing it in, chill rooms that were minus 40. So like extreme conditions. So, these are individuals who deserve to be treated like athletes, and technology allows us to take the work of the wizards and give it to the mere mortals, right? And so for AMP, the other challenge you have on a factory floor like that, you may have 500 workers and one trainer. This ain't Manchester United. There's one trainer, and so technology allows us to scale. So the kind of things that AMP do with Asensei then
I guess you're not a Manchester United fan.
I was a Liverpool fan as a kid. I was more of a Liverpool fan. The captain was Scottish, Kenny Dalglish. I'm aging myself now. But no, for AMP Health, they use Asensei to do a movement screen. So, a trainer can, new hire onboarding, you can screen a population really, really quickly. And it's no longer a goniometer and a 30-minute appointment. It's in you come, go through these 3 movements. Asensei will kind of measure all these, range of motion, and more importantly than just range of motion, like the nuances, like this person seems to have poor hip hinge or poor rotation through their mid spine or whatever. And that does two things. It does a number of things. It benchmarks that employee. Like we know the benchmark of their mobility, so we can retest and rescreen and look for movement. Number two, it allows us to do job fitting. Like if somebody's got incredibly poor shoulder mobility, they shouldn't be getting put in a job where they're lifting load above their head for 10 hours a day. And the third, and perhaps the most important, is risk stratification. For the trainer, we can now answer the question of the 500 people on the factory floor, who are the 20 that are most at risk? So I know who to spend time with movement prep, with mobility. Should they be warming up before work? Should they be doing work between work? Because it's that saying, isn't it? The best ability is availability. You want to keep your workforce available.
So the screening process will then provide a risk indicator for what potential risks that they could have.
And that's the AMP Health platform. They have this platform. AMP is it's assessment, it's then management, and then it's prescription of like what's the things that this person should be doing to stay injury free, or worst case to return to work to recover from injury.
And basically, you guys are the software that has helped them be able to do this analysis on the back end.
Yeah, or arguably on the front end. We are the first touch point an industrial athlete will have with AMP will be just stand here and we're going to show you some exercises and we just want you to do X reps of that. This is the other thing. It doesn't have to be so clinical like a functional movement screen. It's not like squat down to this position and hold it and let me come and measure and you're kind of trying to hold a position. Asensei is much more dynamic. We can watch you do an exercise. We know what exercise you're doing. We can identify any moment in that exercise. So for instance, the bottom of a squat, we know that you just hit the bottom of the squat. And so we might know that's when we want to measure ankle flexion and hip flexion. Okay, so we're not asking you to hold the position so we can measure it. We're just observing it continuously and averaging it or whatever we want to do with it over time. And so it's much more like you just warm up with the trainer, and at the end of that warm up, you have a picture of that individual. And we have brick and mortar customers, going out of connected health and going into gyms and studios. We have brick and mortar customers who are using that same experience, but it's an onboarding assessment. So a company called In Motion Wellness. If you book an appointment at In Motion Wellness, it's an assisted stretching facility. You're onboarding. You're smiling, the guys. Onboarding with your trainer is just warm up in front of this iPad, and at the end, the trainer is going to look at a report that's like, this is what you're doing that well, this is what we're going to work on next.
So some things that I've read, at least in a couple of my classes that I took in college, talked about challenges in the market space, governance, agency, and privacy. Let's pivot to there, I think, because you've given some great use cases. How do you protect against those? Because if I was a practitioner, and now I'm not as practicing as I was in the first 12 years, I remember struggling with NFL athletes trying to ask them to put on a belt because they'd be like, who do you want me to write the check to?
Right.
Because he was going to pay the penalty.
Right.
It was those bravado of athletes. But eventually you got more adoption. What were some of the challenges that you've seen? Because you got people that will do data collection, will not do data collection, will question the result of the assessment, right? And they would want some agency or governance over that.
Yep.
So have you accounted maybe for a little bit of that, so an end user doesn't, or like a coach or a trainer doesn't feel like they're losing it? Because let's be honest, even though I think it's wrong to think this way, because I was having a discussion, AI is going to replace me. No, it's going to augment you. It's going to be completely different. It'll ruin you if you don't adopt any AI, though.
No, that's the kind of the quip, right? AI won't replace coaches, but coaches who use AI will replace coaches who don't. And I think I feel and that's the same for every technology. But your questions of kind of privacy and security and governance, we run entirely on the edge. So we run on device. So no data leaves the phone, no data leaves the laptop, unless our customer wants to store that data longitudinally. So as an example, Amp Health, I'm sure they are absolutely certified in all the ways they need to be to keep PII data and healthcare data, but Asensei isn't keeping it on our servers. So all the motion capture, all the recognition, all of the insights are happening in real time, and we're streaming that data on device to Amp or to Alter or to InMotion Wellness or to whomever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's theirs to do with what they want to do with it, depending on the nature of the company that they are. Now, running on device, that's been non-trivial. To get high performance on device is a testament to the approach that we took to solving the problem. But it's also allowed us to have a very strong position on, we're not uploading video of a patient exercising at home to a cloud to then be processed and stored and de-identified. And so, we dodge those problems in an elegant way. And then to your point about, you were kind of touching on governance and validation. The more you move into the world of sports scientists and you interact with sports scientists, the more that's the first question they want the answer to, like, what studies have you done, and how have you validated it? Now we have. We talked
I
about,
love those questions.
yeah.
It's like I know it's coming.
It's fine, but what I would say, not to dodge the question, I'm happy to talk about. I mean, the headline is the technology. When we go in we've had customers go into a lab environment and kind of use a Vicon, valves, jump assessment, and find themselves to be like under a centimeter of accuracy with quarter of a centimeter standard deviation. So the high school athlete on their phone is getting a vertical jump assessment that's more than good enough for them compared to the 5-figure, 6-figure Vicon system that it's getting compared against. But I think that's the wrong question to be asking. People love to ask the question because they love details and love to read their papers. But the question we should really be asking is, what are we replacing? Now, as a karate coach, I've coached thousands of students and maybe, close to 100 black belts. I never knew the degrees, radians, meters per second of any part of any of my students' bodies, but we did win 10 national consecutive championships. So, you kind of work back from the score a little bit. And as a coach, I think we have to get away from, I think one of the challenges
Analysis.
And also, what comes off the sensor. So let's elevate its importance. When all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So when you've got an IMU that all it can spit out is acceleration and whatever, suddenly you make that the important metric because that's the thing you can measure.
Yeah.
All you can measure is heart rate. We start to over obsess about HRV, and HRV is important, and I'm not trivializing it, but if that's the only thing you can measure, you make that the soul of your experience. Go on.
It should be more of a picture of the continuum of that athlete.
Right.
And it's more contextual than you're talking about. It's not just one metric. And to your point, though, what's the easiest way of data acquisitioning with the least amount of friction? And a camera, if it's markerless, that's answers a big solution. So if I'm handling a roster of 100, 150, college football players, what am I going to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think about it more as well. Like, imagine you've got two 10-year-old kids standing on the plate with a bat in their hand, right? And they're swinging and missing. Kid number one, it's like, all right, your hip was moving at 4.7 radians per second, and it moved 1.2 seconds faster than your elbow, and your kinetic chain, blah, 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 blah. Have another go. They miss again, right? The second kid, you're like, that was good, but just drop your elbow a little bit more. Boom! Knocks the ball out of the park. And the job of a coach is to look at all of these things, the granular stuff, but we need to turn it into a cue for the athlete. Just drop your hip. And that's that's the job of a coach
Yeah.
fundamentally. Is like, how can I just give the simplest articulation of the thing that you can adjust that's going to get you a little bit closer to the performance you're missing?
Yeah, you're talking about behavior and what's involved in that behavior process. That's a complete sports health uh, is definitely something that should include the mental state, the tactical and technical requirements of the skill, and that starts with also behavior. So I agree with you.
It's a
It's
huge part of our
it data
SDK.
has its place.
And that's a huge part of our SDK. I mean, people see our technology and like everyone gets excited by the skeleton and your motion capture and like that's necessary, but absolutely nowhere near sufficient to solve the problem of like how am I going to coach human movement, whether it's sport or fitness. So we have a layer of our SDK um, that we call coaching intelligence. And coaching intelligence is really taking that fire hose of data we have about what the person is and isn't doing and deciding how and when are we going to communicate this to them. And as an example, I like to talk a lot about conscious competence and unconscious incompetence. You know, if you unconscious incompetence is like, I don't even know I'm bad. Like, this is my white belt. Every white belt I ever taught, okay, step forward on your left leg, and they step forward on their right leg, your left leg. Conscious, conscious
Uh,
competence. I like to use the analogy of like just before you sit your driving test for the first time, you're consciously competent at driving. Like if you stop thinking about it, you're going to fail your test. You're going to make a mistake and you're going to mess up. But if you can keep your head in the game and remember all the things, who uses a clutch and an accelerator now, but if you can remember all the things that you've been taught, you'll be able to get through it. And then we all know unconscious incompetence driving. We can text and we can eat and we can chat to people and we can drive at the same time. And so depending on your stage of competence, you have different types of coaching, right? If you're unconsciously incompetent, my job is to, Marcelo, let's break this movement down. Let's break it down into parts. Let's get you into the setup position. Good. Now do this. Great. Fix that. So I'm guided. We call that guided learning or wholehearted coaching.
Chunking, basically. Segmental movement. You're chunking it.
And then take the training wheels off and put it back together again. So that's one mode of teaching. Another mode of teaching might be like, I've told you 100 times about this point of performance. Any of my former karate students that are all watching this podcast, if I was to say, flick the water off your hand, they all know exactly what I'm talking about. It was a metaphor I would use for the very end of a punch, where you would just snap that punch in, and I wanted you to imagine that your hand stopped, but the water would keep going. And really, it was about internal tension. We call it kime. It was about internal tension in the punch and just locking in your frame. Lots of really complicated concepts to teach. It's sinking your weight. It's
it's eccentric loading, right?
Yeah, but flick the water off your hand. And so if you're consciously competent, all you need is a cue. You don't need a lesson. You just need a cue.
Yeah, it's like a fake punch.
Yeah.
I used to always I taught boxing a little bit, so I just that's how I equate that. I definitely agree with you that the skill stuff now is more teachable. Lifting weights is a skill, and qualifying people by benchmarking them is definitely something really important.
Right.
I'm a huge advocate of it. I've always been. I always talked about those requirements to people so they can, as a practitioner, I know I can progress them through this, but this also offers a decentralized type of approach where that person could be cued or coached remotely.
That's exactly it, and that's maybe a nice segue in a couple of directions. But one is connected healthcare and virtual PT. So we have a number of customers now in the physical therapy space where really the two recurring solutions there are, one is very much like AMP Health. How can I just screen someone's movement when they're a small window in Zoom? So I'm doing virtual PT. But I can have you do exercises. I can screen your movement, and the camera can see you better than I can as a PT, and I get all those measurements and insights in real time. And that then sets you on the path to programming. But one of the challenges, obviously, with PT, and any of us that have ever had PT, we know the challenge. You go home, it's like, what are my exercises again? And what am I supposed to do? And am I doing it correctly? And one of the biggest problems in PT is adherence. People don't do it. And it's not because they're like, I'm lazy. It's like I've forgotten. I don't want to get hurt. And so one of the problems Asensei solves in PT is solves that adherence problem. That we can actually guide you through your PT if you're getting stuck on an exercise. We know exactly when you're stuck. We know, and we can unstick you. And then obviously on the back end, we're measuring adherence for reimbursement. If you're getting 10 courses of virtual PT paid through your insurance company, that insurance company wants to know that you're doing it. And so, there's an increased need for technologies that will prove adherence. And so, we're working with companies in MSK injury, but also very excited about another customer of ours called Neurophoenix. And that's neurological rehab for patients recovering from strokes. So, 1 minute we're on an alter mirror just giving you a fun workout to help you lose weight, and next minute we have stroke patients using Asensei to recover from what's an incredibly traumatic event and recover motor movement, and it's the same underlying.
Yeah, I remember the digital lifestyle theme a couple of CESs ago, and now it's kind of been a mainstay at CES, talking about the future of homes, right, or the future of gyms, or just the future of health and well-being. So, yeah, coincidentally, were you at CES this year?
I wasn't. If I never have to go to CES again, I'll be over the moon. When I used to keynote CES at Microsoft, and I'll give you a bit more detail than you need. When I worked for Adobe, we would have sales kickoff in Vegas in December. So I would do 2 weeks in Vegas in December, and then I would go skiing, and then I would be back in Vegas for CES. So I think I've done my CES time at this point, and I like the smaller events and the more targeted events. Yeah.
I prefer, to be honest, love doing engagements where I can get a couple of those professionals locally in the same area.
Yeah.
And present to them a unique solution. But I agree with you. The topic itself of movement and screening movement and your technology and what you guys are offering, connected health and connected fitness, it makes the most sense because if you look at rurally, from just the population standpoint, there's not going to be enough medical professionals.
Right.
So how are they going to get access to them? And people, always are sick and tired of apps, or sick and tired of the model for subscription. What have been do you think there's a right price point, or do you think there's a price point that is is the total, has been your experience, because you've seen a lot, what is a better fit for you from a SaaS model standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, right now our customers pay us a license fee for our technology, and then in connected fitness, it's volume based. We want to grow as they grow, and I'll talk about healthcare is different. Healthcare tends to be more episodic. You don't subscription to like a rehab. It's like you pay for the episode, and so we meet our customers where they are. But if I talk about connected fitness, I would say maybe 2 years ago, our customers were coming to us wondering if we could be that premium offering, because everybody's, 2 years ago, everyone's trying to get to profitability. Like the world, looked different, and it wasn't growth at all costs. It was, let's be a profitable business, and looking for not just how do we acquire more customers, but how do we increase the lifetime value of a customer, and could Asensei and movement recognition and coaching be that premium offering? And many of our engagements with our customers started like that, where we would be like a price bump. But I think, my observation over the last, I'll call it 12 months, is the capability that we're offering is now price of admission. It's increasingly becoming consumer expectation. And it's very hard to see a new product launch to market, especially in connected strength, which is, a big, focus. There are very few products coming to market now where there's not that element of we're using computer vision and form coaching and personalization. Like, we don't want the Jane Fonda workout. You and I don't want to put the same Billy Blanks cassette in our video recorders. Aging myself again, and you did it.
I met him a long time ago at Inersa, He's a great man.
That's
Uh,
awesome. So,
yeah.
but we all put the same video in and got the same workout. I remember one of my designers at Microsoft. He told me he just recorded all his P90X videos as MP3s. I don't need to watch them anymore. I just need to hear them. I've seen them so many times. I know what's coming. I just need the audio cue. And so, that world is gone now, and consumers expect personalization. They want the workout to be tailored to them and to their. Yeah, I talk in other forums a lot about flow. Flow being that equilibrium of challenge and skill.
Yeah.
We now have the ability to assess in real time your competence and your skill, and then we can dial up or dial down the
Yeah.
technical challenge or the load or the reps. And so
Well,
movement recognition and personalization,
it's like
heads up.
being on a pitch and say their legs look heavy.
Right.
You know, hey, we have a number that I could show you what
Yeah.
that looks like. Yeah.
And and we spot things like fatigue as well. Like tempo is a good indicator of fatigue, or the gradual occurrence of form imperfections. Right, you might start off doing 6 really good reps, but suddenly you're not getting to depth, or you're starting to cheat the movement. So we can observe fatigue in ways that other than your heart rate or some other indicator of fatigue, and just dial in the workout. So
Oh,
yeah, that would be my anyone watching that's bringing a product to market, consumer expectation is that this is becoming price of admission, and so it's not a premium offering. And think about it more as, how does it lift engagement, how does it lift net promoter score? Progression is retention, so how does it reduce churn? And that's the way our customers tend to be looking at the value prop around.
great insight. It's hard to make people because they have either old ways of looking at things, right? Which is I got a widget or I got a product, and then I have a software as well, let's say. And
Right,
then some of them will say, well, I'm going to then make a SaaS model out of that,
right.
or we're just a software company. So it's being one, having a true value and mission, and having a history in doing this with other companies. And I think that's really, you have the years of experience with Microsoft all the way to where you are now. Uh, does the platform now currently handle any any API integrations with wearable companies or with other sensor data?
I mean, we can. All of our data is like time series, timestamp data, so we can look at it alongside other data. When we bootstrap the company, even though we're a B2B, we're an ingredient technology.
Hmm.
When we were first deciding what are the core use cases, what are the core capabilities we need to support, we built an app for indoor rowing so that we could go B2C and work with a constituency of users and coaches and governing bodies. So we have a rowing app that's still in the app store that is a material amount of revenue for the company. We can't ever turn that off because we've got a passionate consumer base as well, where you can work out with Olympic rowers like Eric Murray, with British Rowing. Um,
Pretty
but
cool.
but the reason we picked indoor rowing as our study, as our dog, at Microsoft, you talk a lot about dog fooding your technology, eat your own dog food. So, we were dog fooding with indoor rowing. And 2 things I liked about indoor rowing: the number, the number on the screen is pretty much directly related to your technique and form. It's not the wind, it's not the weather, it's not strategy, it's not how good the other team were. It's like, did you organize yourself correctly? Did you do a good stroke? And did you repeat that for 2,000 meters? And if you do that well, you get a good time. But we were getting all of that data off the performance monitor. If you look at Concept 2, it has that little performance monitor. So we're getting all the stroke data, we're getting all the force curve data, and we're able to marry that data to your technique and form. So if we tell you to get your shins vertical at the catch, or we tell you that you're over leaning at the finish, or we tell you that you're lifting the handle over your knees, we can actually correlate that with the force in the stroke. And if we fix your form, we can fix your function. We can see the numbers changing as well. So that was one of the reasons I really liked Concept 2. And now I look at some of our other customers, like, say, Vertimax. Vertimax brought a companion app to market called Verticoach using our spatial computing, the distance. So now we can do floor estimation. We can tell how high you've jumped. Is it your center of mass? Is it your lowest point of body to the floor? Is it the highest point of the body to the ceiling? So we can watch you perform, say, a countermeasure jump. We can coach you that you're doing it, coach you how to do it better, your timing, your sequencing, and we can show you the answers in your vertical. It's kind of like the concept too, right? We'll measure the numbers.
It's been studied for years, so it's not, you're not recreating the wheel. It's
we're giving you the data, and we're giving it in real time, right? We're giving it in real time.
Yeah, no, and I think that's brilliant. Good examples of health and of fitness as well, and performance.
Yep.
The biggest thing that I think, in kind of wrapping all this up with our discussion, in how can people, either, are you doing any events? How can people find out a little bit more about you? If you want, I can have your website information shared with people. Is there anything you want me to share from if there's a handout or a one pager? Let me know.
Yeah, I think the best place to find this is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is just it's where the industry hangs out, and we try to be quite prolific in sharing and not reporting on what everyone else is doing. We love to just, we have a novel point of view. Nobody agreed with us for 8 of the last 10 years that what we were doing was
Here's the problem with the industry, and I think we could say it because we've been in it, right? Is that you have, by the time that something is regularly studied or used, it's already been proven wrong half the time. That's what science does, right? So there's been a lot of old technology that was still being used for way too long. Real technology hasn't really advanced outside of software. Software has drastically, now with the new chip technology, the super chips, and we're going to see it even explode further. Large learning solutions, robotics, and the AI component is just going to be, I think it's going to really kind of drastically change everything. Hopefully for the best. I don't want Skynet, but I want, I want basically something that's going to improve my workday, my health, my fitness, my well-being. And at that time, I was selling one lead ECGs. They said PPGs would never be in existence.
Right.
PPGs came out. Now PPGs are everywhere. Now you got rings. Now you have different types of sensor technology. Cameras back then, being the kinetic camera, was the only one, the only kid in the block. And now you have off-the-shelf proprietary products, but those are ridiculously priced. Some are good, that are affordable, that you can get off the shelf, like you talked about, a cheap RGB. But cameras now are going to be that solution, along with accelerometers. Now it's everywhere. It's changing drastically.
I mean, I think what you'll find with us, like I said, on LinkedIn, we try and just give people a peek behind the curtain, share our point of view. What I always say to the team is that we want to speak about the category. We want to speak about the customers. Then we might speak about our company, and eventually we'll speak about the technology and the how. But I'm a big believer, and I learned this at Adobe. We're very kind of user-centric, design thinking in our DNA, and that was the DNA of my team. Is really help frame the problem for people, so that you're anchoring them in the problem that exists. And hopefully, in a lot of even you and I's conversation today, we've really anchored people in the problem of learning physical exercise without an expert in the room, and the problem of turning data into just that one cue that you need. And that's what you'll find from us on LinkedIn. Is we'll really, and something we didn't speak about today, but the DNA in our team at a leadership level, we've all coached. So every single day, if you were to jump into an Asensei Zoom meeting, we're not talking about pose estimation and XYZ and quaternions. We're all standing there like, well, when I used to coach, or one thing we think about how we coached people to do things, and then we ask ourselves a question: how could we make the technology coach like that? So we're trying to really bring best practice of human performance coaching to market.
You bring a really great point. Back then, the developers of companies were more engineering driven. Today, I would see the changes owners and operators, almost anyone. So you're defining, there are a lot more athletes getting involved. There are a lot more coaches getting involved. There are more practitioners getting involved, no doubt. It's nice to see because um, you can see when something's developed by an engineer and you can see when someone's designed by someone that's actually been in an environment.
Yeah.
I've benefited because I've been that, and I've typically been the end user of that product.
Right.
So I've always been the subject matter expert where I've been able to apply. I'm like, so you're telling me this will do this for me?
Yeah, I mean, we're running out of time here, but I'll share this with you quickly. No product survives first contact with the customer, right? And so we had this SDK. When we originally launched the SDK, the information it was spitting out was enough for us to know exactly how you would then turn that into like a coaching experience. The 3 or 4 leaders in the company were chip designers and were software engineers and were coaches. Like there's no impedance mismatch because it's all in the same brain. But as soon as you separate those mindsets into different minds, as soon as you put a coach in a room with a hardware engineer, in a room with a content team and a product team, they don't speak the same language. And so our SDK has 3 very distinctive surfaces depending on your role in bringing this product to market. We provide tooling for coaches to express how they coach and what they coach. We provide tooling for content teams to say, this is all the content that we have, so that when the coach says, teach this, here's the content to teach that. And for the engineers, we found that engineers generally across the industry, there shouldn't be an expectation that they understand human performance coaching or sports coaching. And some of them don't even, they might not go to fitness classes or have been coached in this. So we've removed all responsibility from the engineer to have to solve the coaching problem, and they just have to solve the engineering problem of like, it's time to display this content, it's time to play this audio file, it's time to update that counter on the screen here, and not worry about how the coaching is performed. So that's been a significant competitive advantage for us, is that we've been able to tease apart those roles and make them collaborate as opposed to butt heads.
It's definitely more advantageous probably where you are compared to the larger business organizations you have to deal with. But I think that's an awesome story to end on, because that really drives home. If there's any other companies or anyone else have questions about this great talk today, just leave it in the comments. I'll make sure Steven answers them, or myself. But I really want to thank you again, Steven. This has been really cool to get to know you, and to see how it's kind of a small world. We know each other through a couple of people. So
we probably stood in the same lines at CES, I dare say.
I'd say. Well, take care.
Likewise, thank you.